All right, guys, how's it going? Stu Jones and Gareth Worthington here. I'm gonna talk to you for a few minutes about, we had a few questions. We put it out on social media. We had a few questions come in reference to our books and what we've been doing lately, our release coming up this week, as well as some of the questions about our process and how we do what we do. So we're here today. We're going to talk a little bit about that and back and forth and hopefully help you guys have a better understanding of what that process looks like. Just a brief history on us. Gareth and I met back in, Gareth, was it 2011, 2012?
Yeah, something about that. Yeah, about 2011, 2012. Yeah.
Okay, so on Goodreads, which sounds really shaky. Like, I always laugh when I tell my friends this, yeah, we met on Goodreads. It sounds like we met in some dark web, chat room looking for soliciting sex or something, and that's really not what happened. But we ended up kind of realizing that we kind of got each other. We got each other's right. We had read each other's books. We got each other's style. We felt like that on some level meshed, and at some point the thought came up, hey, maybe we should write something together. And it was kind of a yeah, okay.
Well, I think what actually happened was we slated each other's books for a good year first, because we were writing. I tricked you into reading my book because I put something in there about religion and it wasn't about religion. So that was kind of,
right.
And we were kind of pretty candid with each other, right? I mean, I was quite open about things, improvements for yours, and you were the same with mine. I think your first review of my first novella was quite honest. I think I remember you telling me that it was like jumping into the middle of a movie where I didn't know what was going on, and then it just stopped. I think that was your first review of but you were right. I mean, that was the point. The point is you were right. I knew it. So
right, but I think the feedback we gave each other in those early days really kind of helped to establish our working relationship together, because right from the start we just slated each other. We were brutally honest about, hey, your story's lacking this, and I feel like if you added more of X, Y, and Z, it would be better.
Yeah.
And then here's the key, though. We went from there, and we were and in being honest with each other, we took that feedback and we used it instead of being butthurt and having egos or whatever.
Yeah,
we used it to make our stories better. And I think it was that process that kind of initially, that nexus, that made us go, oh, hang on a second, maybe this could evolve and we could start, doing this on a bigger scale, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I liked that, you were doing essentially sort of Christian horror, as it were, sort of Christian horror. And I really liked it because you took a completely different tact to it. Some of your stuff was brutal. Like, I had to put the book down. I was like, damn, that's hard. I still haven't forgiven you for certain elements of books, and
I don't think other readers have either.
And but it was, and that's why when embryonically Star, way back in the day. So when did we start Star?
So around 2015-ish.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I just moved back from Singapore. I was at my old place. Yeah, 2015. But it took me ages. I mean, I knew I had an idea. I wanted to explore science and religion, and I wanted to do it, no pun intended, faithfully. And I knew I wouldn't be able to write that side of it. I wouldn't do it justice. And that's why I kind of approached you. But yeah, for a while you told me to bugger off. You're just like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because honestly, that was really driven by fear back then. Like, okay, here's this guy. He lives on the other side of the world, literally. We're very different people. The one thing that was like, our styles were kind of similar, and we were both dedicated to the same basic tenets of excellence. And I think it was those things that initially got me to kind of make the leap and say, okay, let's give this a shot and see what happens. And here, multiple awards later, on Star, not to just toot our horn, but obviously something we did worked on some level.
Yeah.
And so then in the process, we've gotten to be good friends and be able to confide each other and really trust in each other. And that in itself has further bolstered kind of what we're about and what we're doing. So,
yeah.
So cool. So just a little backstory there for anybody who isn't familiar. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions. One of our first questions from our reader is, what's your next book about? Pretty basic question. Now, what's your next book about is kind of a loaded question because, you know, I know you've got multiple projects in the works. Moon is releasing this week. It's a sequel to It Takes Death to Reach a Star. Most of you guys are familiar with. And then we have an upcoming story, Condition Black, a medical military thriller that's coming out this upcoming year, first quarter 2021. And then, of course, like I said, we both got other solo projects that are in the pipe in different stages of development. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to just go with Moon to begin with, and we'll touch on Condition Black. Essentially, like I said, In a Shadow of a Valiant Moon is the follow-up or direct sequel to It Takes Death to Reach a Star, which is, you know, our big one, our first work together, our multi-award winning novel. Moon really is, if you thought Star was dark, Moon really goes dark. Because like the themes of science and faith that we attempted to tackle in the first book, we take that and we really just twist it in. I mean, twist those hooks in. So the whole point was to continue the story arcs that we had with Star, really further developing, fleshing out these characters and creating more tension in the places where we had begun to develop it in the first novel, right?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I mean, we've got a couple of guys who are Hollywood veterans who look at our work, you know, because obviously our publisher always looks to try and get our stuff into the movies. That's kind of their job. That's what they do. They specialize in it. And they came back after reading Moon and were like, guys, this is dark. Like, this is dark. We even had to lighten up a little tad to make it palatable enough that it might, you know, be okay for general consumption. And not because it was particularly horrific, and it's not because, you know, we graphically describe lots and lots. We did. I think we toned a couple of those bits down as well.
We did.
But Stu and I are realists, you know. I think we both live in the real world, and we don't pander, and we don't do things that are either obvious or seem out of character, you know. And I think if you've read Star, I don't want to give away spoilers, but if you read Star, then you know how it ends. And when you remove certain people from power in a extremist stroke terrorist situation, things are not roses afterwards. Things don't just go, oh, that's wonderful, and now we've saved the world. That's just not what happens in the real world. Right. So Stu and I were looking at what was going on in our current environment at the time. We were writing that book, I guess, in 2019. We started writing 2018, 2019. We started writing that one.
Yeah.
And we were looking at the world around us and watching what was happening in very similar situations, and that's what we put in there. And so it is dark, and characters who you love get put through the ringer because that's what happens. You know, it's not all daisies and flowers and roses, and
right.
You know, that's just not life.
No.
And so, you know, and for that reason, maybe the book isn't for everybody. That's just, but we kind of accept that, right? We know we're not writing for people who want to have, you know, the happy side of everything all the time.
Yeah. And I think for us, there's so much excitement in getting ready to release this story this week because, one, it's been kind of in the pipe for a long time. We've really been waiting, and we've had to bump it back several times due to publisher requests and issues and COVID and all these different things. And so, you know, it was initially slated for probably a year ago to release. And then like I said, we've had to bump it back. So we're really, really excited to get this out there, get the story out there. I remember when we were conceptualizing it originally, that the thing came up. It was how, you know, Moon is going to be the second book. How do you top that? How are we going to, you know, because Star was so kind of fantastic there in the end with fantastic energy wise and just sort of the scope. Like, how do we even build on that, you know? And somehow we did. And according to initial reports, it is more epic than, you know, than that first installment. So
the difficult second album for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So we are just super excited to release Moon this week, and we are just super grateful for everyone's support who has been with us on this journey so far. Moving forward from there, you've probably seen little snippets coming out of Condition Black. We just threw out the little teaser on the cover, and some imagery. You've been seeing me drop some stuff, you know, 20,000 words, 30,000 words, 40,000 words. I do that to kind of, you know, let you know that it's still working. It's still in the pipe. But Condition Black is our medical military thriller. It's going to be Gareth and I. It's going to be our third work together. And we are aiming to publish it this upcoming spring. Gareth, anything you want to add about it? We're being a little bit cryptic about it right now because we're still a little bit out, but
yeah, I mean, so this one was actually, you know, whereas Star was kind of like my kind of embryonic initial thought, which honestly veered way off my original idea, but in a good way. This one was actually yours. So this was a story, you know, I have to say Stu has got a little notepad or you know, dictaphone he's got with like a gazillion ideas in there. He just rattles them off and would kind of have a little chat about which ones we think we'd like to work on together. And this was one of yours. And yeah, it was kind of, you know, it's, again, we kind of write cinematically, so we're always thinking about how these kind of things look on screen. And the twist in this one, this medical military thriller, would look awesome on screen. I gotta say, it's really cool. But, you know, I think with, you know, you guys might have read the blurb online already, so it's not a secret what it's, at least what the story is roughly about. I'm not going to go on here. You guys can go look for it. But what Stu and I are good at is, at least I think so, is writing good broken characters, people that are real, right? So they have flaws. The good guys have flaws. The bad guys do good things. You know, it's just kind of, that's kind of life, right? It's gray. It's not necessarily as black and white as we would like it to be. And so that's the kind of the theme we were playing with Condition Black. You know, what good is really your perspective, and so that's really cool. I think that the tagline for me says it all. That the greatest battle is within, and that just worked for this book on multiple levels. It's a clever tagline, and again,
no doubt. We're gonna jump off that, so we're not divulging too much too early. But you guys stay tuned for updates as they come down the pipe on that project. It's our initial reports from our beta readers are 2 thumbs up. So
yeah.
Hopefully we're maintaining that same level of energy and excitement that you guys are coming to expect from us. So Gareth, this next question is going to start with you. One of our readers asked, what technology or resources do you use to stay in touch and scientifically relevant?
So yeah, I'm actually one of those guys that I'm sure a lot of writers will say is blasphemy, but I read a lot of nonfiction. So I'm actually not a huge fiction reader. I do read some, but most of my inspiration comes from nonfiction. So my bookshelf, which is over here, is mainly filled with nonfiction stuff. And I've got a big thing for theoretical physics and astrophysics, things like quantum biology, kind of like the real cutting edge of where science is, and particularly where we're trying to understand the universe and how it actually ties into our tiny little lives. And that for me is kind of, where I get a lot of the things from. On top of that, obviously I subscribe to almost every scientific blog out there you can find. And, I often get things that just pop up on Facebook or Instagram or, my RSS feed. And I'll be, oh, that's quite interesting. And I'll go find that and I'll click on it. And I'll think that I can use that, and I'll file it away somewhere. And then I start working it in. I mean, I'm not going to talk about too much here. But I have a solo piece of work, and I've got this whole story arc worked out. And I came across a news article about something 2 days ago, and I was just like, that is perfect. That piece of information is exactly the piece I need to make this work. And it just completely elevated the story tenfold. It just makes, and it's really the absolute cutting edge of physics right now, the piece that I'm talking about. And it's great. I love doing that.
And that's that's a neat point, because what happens, and this happens between us all the time, you know, we'll come across these little things, little scientific journal or a little blurb in the news, and we'll fire it to each other and be like, check this out.
Yeah.
And it'll be something that literally we've been, you know, dealing with or evolving in one of our stories.
Yeah.
Or something that we've theorized about for a future story or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so that's really our big thing. You know, it's maybe you call it hard science fiction. We like to think that what we do is not just for the hardcore science fiction nerds. We want to craft thrillers that are you know, accessible to everybody, you know. And but one of the key factors, one of the key elements that kind of is what we do is we want it to be as realistic and as scientifically viable as possible. And that's really where Gareth comes in big time, because he's kind of the scientific nucleus of what we do. I'm kind of the creative idiot who's just like just circus of ideas and thoughts coming out all the time. And he is the scalpel, like cutting things down and making sure that this is, you know, you're going to have to suspend disbelief a little bit, but maybe not so much that you're just totally like, oh, what is this, you know?
Yeah.
So it's going to connect to the world and to the realities that you understand.
Yeah,
right?
I think you made a good point about making it understandable for the masses. So a lot of particularly sci-fi books can get kind of stuck in the weeds about something, and they're very good. But I'm a scientist. I mean, that's my job. I get bored and I start flipping through. I've read a couple of books recently, fiction books, where the science is great, but it takes you 16 pages to get through it, and I'm like, well, that's kind of detracting from the story. And so my day job actually is to take very complex clinical trials and make it understandable for a day-to-day oncologist so they can understand what they're doing. And that's essentially what I do here in our books. Is I take this really complicated thing and boil it down to its essence and make it understandable enough that you go, okay, and move on with the story.
Which is really helpful for me, because I need the Science for Dummies version. I remember we're working on Star, and you were having to give me the quantum physics for dummies lesson. And, you know, not that you're an expert either, but you were having to give me the quantum physics for dummies lesson over the phone. And I'm sitting here going, okay, yeah, I think I can understand that well enough to work it into the story, you know. But that really, it really keeps it fun, and it also keeps you mentally engaged. It keeps us mentally engaged by double checking, researching, make sure what you're doing is based in reality. Right?
Yeah. And equally, I mean, flip that on its head. I can't just write the word gun in any manuscript, because Stu's like, what gun? Which one? What, you know, which gun? I don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, that's not good enough. You know, we need to have the make, the model, you know, any mods, you know. That adds detail, and that's you know, and I love that about the work. You did that to me in Children of the Fifth Sun. I had someone kind of like firemen carrying someone up a vertical ladder on a building, and you were just like, that's just not going to happen. You know,
never be able to do that. Yeah,
not going to happen. So, you know.
That's good stuff, though. So that kind of segues us into the way that we interact and the way that we communicate. Another question is, what are the biggest challenges of co-authoring? The biggest moments of excitement. Okay, so challenges and excitement. And I think we're really on the same page with this, as we are a lot of things, which is one of the boons here. This is one of, like, co-authoring a book, a novel that you invest so much time and effort and research into, I mean, thousands of hours. To share that with another person is a big investment and a major leap of faith if you've never done it before. And so one of the biggest challenges is actually trusting that person initially, trusting them with your hard work, and knowing that if they make changes, they're doing it because they care about the work as much as you do. And so that's where you really got to take your ego and set it aside and go, okay, we're just two guys, friends, working on this story. I'm going to put something in. He's going to tell me it sucks. I'm going to refine it. I'm going to tell him something that he did sucks. We're going to go back and forth and probably irritate each other a little bit. But at the end of the day, we know we're both working towards the same goal of excellence, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when we first started that, we were very nervous and we got the other person to track change everything.
Track changes and everything.
Yeah,
right.
Wanted to see exactly what the other person would change. Is he changing my word? I like this word, and in the end, you kind of realize you got to get past that, because you're never going to get anywhere. And we're at the point now, we don't even do that most of the time to each other, unless we're talking about a very final draft that's been like proofread. We want to make sure we're not screwing up any typos.
Right.
But as a general rule, we don't track change stuff anymore. I know where your head is at, and you know where my head is at. So it's kind of, I can read something you've done, and I'm like, I know what he wants here. I know what Stu's trying to say here, and I can adjust a few bits and pieces. And you're confident enough to know that I'm not going to ruin what you've just written. All I'm doing is just maybe reordering something or making it, flow or something, etc. And it works.
Yeah, definitely. And that leads into the other, that the challenge also generates energy for the excitement, which is when you have a co-author you're working with, if it's just you working on your project, and we have our solo projects, and I'm telling you, like, I'll work through an entire solo project and I'm like, oh yes, I love this part. This is great. Oh, I can't wait to share this. And then I close my computer and I stand up and I'm like, nobody cares, like nobody knows, nobody else knows, nobody cares. My wife, she just, like, I'll say something to her like, oh, I just wrote this really cool scene. She's like, oh, okay. You want to get pizza tonight? So it's just like, like nobody cares on the level that you care until you have a co-author. And then when you have that co-author, it's like, I can hit you up and go, dude, I've got this idea, or check this out. What about for this scene? And then to hear that other person go, oh yeah, that's fantastic. And then it's like, it's a snowball. Like that snowball starts off as a grain of sand, and going down the hill, it's like, because you've got all this energy behind the project now. And so if I get excited, that boosts you. If you get excited, it boosts me, and we just keep climbing. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You get us on a Skype call and be like, it'll be 10 minutes. Just go, I want to run this one thing by you. 2 hours later, we're still on the call. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We go down rabbit holes, but oh yeah, well, if this happens, then that needs to happen, and then this could happen, and I have to say, one of the things that it's also the way we write. So I think that makes it easier, in that we generally like to bring our personality and our view to a book, and so we tend to give it, like, say, okay, I'm going to write this character and you're going to write that character, and that gives the author some freedom, because I can't tell Stu what his character is going to do, because it's Stu's character. He knows how that person thinks and breathes and wants to see the world and will react to things. So I can't come in and go, well, that would never happen, and change things, because I can't know that. And so one of the reasons it's good for energy is because I'll read one of Stu's chapters and it'll make me go, oh, and that will pump me for my next chapter, because I know what's, I need to do something. Or I'll read one of his and I never saw something coming, and you're like, oh man, that's awesome. And you're learning, you're doing the story with the person. I don't know what Stu's going to do other than the rough outline next. So
yeah, that was one of the coolest things initially in Star, and still it happens. But to read, I literally, it's not just lip service. We're like, hey man, I'm looking forward to reading your next chapter, because it's honest to goodness. It's almost like I'm getting to experience the story for the first time, because I don't know what your character is going to do, just like you said.
Yeah.
So I get to read that and I'm like, oh, that's freaking awesome. Okay, now I'm going to build off that, you know?
Yeah.
So like you said, it just, the energy is just exponential when you start working with a co-author. Now, the caveat there is this goes into the next question, which is, do you ever bicker over the storyline? And if so, how do you sort out disagreements? That's a great question. So Gareth, I'll let you lead on this, but you know, that is a real, that can be, if you don't have the right person,
yeah,
you're not working with somebody you trust, you know, with and you trust with your book baby, that can be a real point of contention.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever bickered over storylines. I think sometimes, most of the time, we'll say, hey, how about this? The other person goes, you're right, that's a good idea. And then every so often we'll hit a point where we may see things slightly differently, and we just discuss it backwards and forwards, and then eventually we'll just jump on a call and try and figure it out. And I would say almost every time, the biggest, I'm not going to call it an issue, the biggest challenge, the biggest point in the book you and I work on is the opening.
Oh yeah,
it's the first page, always, and not because we're you know, being ridiculous or mean or whatever. It's that first page has got to hook the reader. It really does. You don't get them in the first couple of lines, you know, and then the first paragraph, and then the first page. That you've lost them. And so we go over that first page and that opening scene over and over and over, and we revisit and we rewrite and then still rewrite it, and then I'll rewrite it until we get to a point where we're like, okay, this works.
We do that a little bit with the blurb as well.
Oh, geez.
Like the blurb tends to be, you know, when we're working on our book blurb, it just you know, we end up just hashing like, and that's the moment, because you know you've only got 250 words or whatever it is. So that's the time when it's like, you get your butt hurt, you get your butt on your shoulders. You're like, man, you know what? I really liked that word, and he took it out, you know. but once you start whittling it down, you know, it's like a sculptor, right? You've got to start carving material away in order to get that art form.
Yeah.
And so just like the story is like that, the blurb is like that. But I think for us, the biggest solution in sorting out disagreements is communicating. Yeah. And I think both of us are really good about being genuine with each other in our communication. You don't expect something from me that you don't tell me. Yeah. I don't, you know, I don't not express myself to you and then be mad about it, or take what you say personally and get my ego in a twist, you know. But as being co-authors, being partners in writing a story like this, being friends, we understand that open communication and being straight with each other and cutting all the frills and the fluff out and just being like, here it is, is the way to slice through the other nonsense.
Yeah, right? I think that's just how you and I approach life in general. We both like the phrase, the facts don't care about your feelings, right?
Right.
That was just kind of that way in general in life. So, you know, it's never something against Stu as a person and vice versa. We agreed at the beginning that if it was cliche or, you know, obvious or whatever, we kill it dead, you know,
right.
Get out.
Absolutely. All right. So next question, what does the process of writing with each other look like logistically? What sort of trust does that require? Okay, so we've already covered this one a little bit, but I'll touch on a few things here. The process of writing logistically, we've already touched on the fact that we each typically write different characters, which kind of keeps each of us, so to speak, in our lane during the formation of the story. And then we're going back and we're, you know, adding our touches to each other's chapters, so there's crossover and continuity throughout the story, so it doesn't feel, and that's one thing I'll give us an attaboy on. You know, we've had readers say that one thing they enjoyed about Star is that, you know, it doesn't feel like you're reading a book written by two people. And I think that's something where we have done a good job of ironing out those inconsistencies that can be jarring. And logistically, we kind of each write our chapters. We're cross-checking each other and blending it together. And logistically, like I said, we're now at a point in our writing career where we totally eschew the track changes. So we're not just nitpicking each other's changes or whatever, unless it's, like you said, a late version of the draft where we need to be precise. And in favor of that, it's just, again, trust. Is the second part of that question was, what sort of trust does it require? It requires all of it. It requires all of it, because this is your baby that you're working on. And so you've got to know that person is not going to sabotage you.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's just, I trust you, and I know it helps that we get each other. We're both like 80s movies fans, so we know the kind of action sequences and the references, and we know what the other one brings to the party, right? There's no ego here. So like, if I'm writing an action scene, I know that Stu's going to go in and change it, not because he's being an asshole, because Stu knows what he's talking about. And so when he rewrites my action scene for me, I'm grateful. It's kind of great, thank you, because you've elevated that. I couldn't do that, and so I mean, I can even get a bit lazy, but like, he picks up a gun and shoots someone. Stu, can you make that, like,
Well, the same thing happens for me on the flip side. Obviously you bring the real impact, the real legitimacy to the science and scientific elements. In working on my upcoming cyberpunk story, there was several things that I was like, you gave me some solid feedback on sciencey stuff that I kind of, my little imagination is just doing cartwheels. And I'm like, oh, and this would be cool. And check this, and then this. And you're like, oh, yeah, this would not happen like this, So that helps keep us grounded in our own works outside of our works together too. And affords us each opportunities to grow and develop on a solo path as well.
Yeah, you did that to me. So I've got a solo project coming out in May next year. It's my first thriller. Happened to have a cop as one of the protagonists, and you ripped my first chapter of that guy. Just like, this is shit. I hate this. It's a cliche. And you were totally right. And the way you helped me reframe that opening scene just works brilliantly for that character, and it did add it. It's getting rid of the cliches. I'd gone for a cliche without even thinking about it, and you called me.
Yeah. So. Well, and so that's at the end of the day, it's those things that make a partnership like that work. And it's with any business you have, your business partner out there in the world, whatever it is that you do, like, you've got to be able to trust that person, explicitly. Okay, so Gareth, what comes next, and do you plan to continue writing together? That's our final question.
So absolutely. Actually, I find it hard writing on my own now, for the reason that Stu said earlier, that lack of energy and the lack of enthusiasm from people around you, not because they don't care, but because they don't care as much as you do, right? And we've got our solid little base of fans that we're super grateful for, and they help us to read our books, and we couldn't be more grateful for those guys. But no one's going to care about your book as much as you do, apart from your co-author. And so absolutely, I really like writing with Stu. It just works. I've had other authors approach me for writing a book, and I'm just like, I'm not sure that's going to work. And it's not meant horribly. I'm old now. I don't need more friends. It's just, we've, like you say, we've just got into this place where we trust each other, and to start that over with a new person, that's hard. And you've got to, start that again. And it'll be difficult if you didn't have the same rapport, right? And then you have to go back. So we are already thinking about our next book. So there's one that, again, this is my turn now. So I've got an idea, and Stu's got an idea. We're trying to bring it together for a thriller next that we were talking about the other day. But we've got the big one where we got this huge idea that we don't know how to make work right now. It's one of those things where we feel we need to grow as authors before we can tackle it. So Steve and I like to push ourselves and don't want to repeat things. So a good example of that is Star is duology. We don't believe in writing more books than you need to. I'm not going to write a trilogy or a quadrilogy or whatever if a story doesn't require it. So Star was 2 books worth of story, and that's how long it is. And that's kind of what we're doing. We wrote it first person present tense, which was, a lot of people were concerned about it, and luckily we think we pulled it off. Condition Black was a push again, so we'd never written third person past together before. That's harder. And we were introducing quite personal themes. And again, you can read it in the blurb. One of them's quite personal to me. That was difficult. The big project we've got going on is so big. We don't know how to start it. We want to do it, but it really pushes our writing skill to the limit, really. Would you reckon?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like you said, we're trying to push the boundaries. We want to keep it fresh and do something new, and not just recycle. And this next project, we've really danced around our next, that future joint project. We've kind of really danced around the outer edge of what it could be. And the possibilities are so endless and huge that it's a little bit daunting as to how we're actually going to frame that up. So that one's going to have to germinate a little bit, I think. And we've got other things planned in the meantime. We've each got solo series we're working on, and other things going on. And of course, the Star and Moon duology is still in development for TV and film, which is cool. So we're still kind of grasping at those straws when they come at us. But there's some neat things happening there behind the scenes. So which we're not allowed to talk about very much. But there's some neat things that are kind of little threads that are happening here and there. So, but for the foreseeable future, honestly, and we've had this conversation, I see working with you, we've become good friends through this. I see working with you on something or other for the foreseeable future, because it's a benefit to both of us, and it's a boon to both of our writing, and we have this opportunity to come together and mesh our energy and create something really unique. And I think that's kind of ends up being the driving force,
Yeah, definitely.
So that's going to about wrap it up. I know we've probably drug on long enough. And if you've stayed long enough to watch this entire video, we love you. But no, seriously, we are just so grateful for all of our friends, family, readers, followers on social media. We're so grateful for all of you guys who have supported us along the way, who have spent your hard-earned money and your time investing in our stories. We make one solitary pledge to you, and that is, you can always know that behind the scenes we are working as hard and as tirelessly as we can to deliver you the absolute best that we can deliver. We are never going to just push some junk at you, because that's not what we do.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I can't say it better, dude, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So you guys have a wonderful week. Look for In the Shadow of a Valiant Moon. It's dropping on Tuesday, August 25th. It's going to be fantastic. We're looking forward to hearing what you guys think and how that goes as we roll it out.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. Peace.
All right. Later.